This happened a few weeks ago. I'm 32 and have worked at this shipping warehouse for years. I always took the night shifts to help my family pay the bills. That night felt different. It was quiet. The fluorescent lights above me flickered, casting strange shadows. I started moving boxes and checking the inventory, but an uneasy feeling washed over me. At first, I thought it was just tiredness. I kept seeing shadows shift in my peripheral vision, but I figured it was the light playing tricks. I noticed chalky footprints on the floor, leading toward the loading dock. I tried to brush it off, thinking it might just be dust from an old shipment. My heart raced, but I pushed the feeling aside and focused on my work. As days went by, the fear grew. Those shadows became more defined, almost like they were reaching out for me. Sometimes I heard clanging metal sounds echoing through the aisles. It felt like someone was beside me, but I was alone. One night, I heard muffled laughter, a cruel sound that sent chills down my spine. I hated going to the warehouse after that. A few nights later, I stumbled upon a hidden room while checking the loading area. The door creaked open slowly. I felt a chill run down my spine. Inside, dusty mirrors were scattered across the walls. I looked into one and my heart sank. I didn't see my own reflection. I saw something dark and twisted staring back. I didn't know what to do. I stood frozen, lost in my thoughts. Maybe the shadows were real, remnants of something trapped in there. I started to dread my shifts. Each flicker of the lights made my heart race. The whispers grew louder in the dark. I was scared to be there alone. The warehouse felt wrong, and I felt my grip on reality slipping away. One evening, while I was stacking boxes, I saw a figure out of the corner of my eye. When I turned, there was nothing there. A strong chill swept over me, as if hands were brushing against my neck. What was happening? The shadows seemed stronger, nearly consuming me. I backed toward the door. That's when I heard the laughter again, closer this time. I hesitated. My heart raced, cold sweat trickling down my back. I turned to face the darkness enclosing around me. That's when I noticed the mirrors again, reflecting a different loading dock behind me. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. I could see a man, but he didn't look real. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I wanted to scream but couldn't. Panic filled me. Then he leaned closer, as if he wanted to share a secret. "Why do you stay?" he whispered. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The shadows swirled around me, wrapping tighter. I didn't know how I would escape. I could only stand there, breathless, trapped between the fear and the darkness. My world was changing, and I was powerless to stop it. I wanted to scream. My heart pounded, but no sound came out. I felt that twisted figure peer deeper into my soul, and I knew I needed to move. It was like a weight pressed down on my chest. I forced myself to turn away from the mirror and sprint for the door. As I ran, the laughter grew louder, echoing off the metal walls, mixing with the sound of my racing heart. Each step felt heavy, like I was wading through water. The shadows flared up around me, and I glanced behind to see the figure in the mirror now standing at the edge of the hidden room, watching me with a cruel smile. "Don't go," he called out, his voice a low growl. "You don't want to leave yet." I burst through the door and fled into the main section of the warehouse. The flickering lights barely cut through the darkness, and I stumbled, nearly falling over a stack of boxes. I felt the cold draft against my skin, rushing past like a breath. I had to get out. I rounded the corner, desperate to reach the exit. But the laughter followed me, bouncing off the crates. It seemed to be coming from everywhere. Panic gripped me. My mind raced to think of a plan. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen, not anymore. Then I remembered the hidden room. I needed to go back. There was something there. Maybe it held answers, Or maybe it would help me confront whatever this was. With shaky breaths, I slowly made my way back. Each step felt like I was walking on broken glass. I paused at the door, listening. The laughter had faded to whispers, snippets of words that brushed against my ears. They twisted through my mind, layering over each other until I couldn't comprehend. I opened the door again, and the chill gripped me anew. I stepped inside, the mirrors reflecting the dim light in 1,000 directions. I focused on my own reflection this time, the panic in my eyes. I needed to find a way to fight whatever this was. Then, as if called by my determination, the dark figure appeared again, but this time he stood beyond the mirrors. He was solid, his features now clear. I could see anger and hunger etched across his face. "You think you can escape," he mocked. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, my voice trembling. He stepped closer, his smile widening. "Because you should learn the truth. There's more to this place than you know." I didn't reply. But what truth? My heart raced. What did he mean? Before I could gather my thoughts, the mirrors behind me began to ripple, like waves flowing on a disturbed pond. That's when everything went dark. I stumbled backward, the whispers transforming into screams that pierced my ears. It felt like I was falling. And I grasped at the edges of the mirrors frantically. Whatever grip I thought I had on my reality was slipping away. I closed my eyes, feeling the darkness engulf me completely. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a different place. A room, dimly lit, with strange symbols etched on the walls. The air felt heavy with anticipation. I looked around frantically, realizing I wasn't alone. I had crossed a line. Someone, or something, awaited me, and I wasn't even sure where I was anymore. The air was thick, almost electric. I could feel it pressing in around me, suffocating in its intensity. The dim light barely illuminated the symbols on the walls, curved lines and sharp angles intermingling in a dance of shadows. I turned slowly, trying to make sense of my surroundings. Then I saw him, the figure from the mirrors, standing closer than before, his presence looming unnaturally. He looked different here, more vivid, more real. His eyes glinted with a predatory curiosity, and I could see the hunger behind them. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, gripped by a fear I had never known. "Welcome," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I see you decided to join me." I finally found my voice. "What do you want from me?" I managed to whisper, the words trembling on my lips. "What I want is inconsequential," he replied, stepping forward. The shadows danced around him as if responding to his very presence. "What matters is what you're willing to uncover." His words hung in the air like a challenge. I felt my heart racing again, but not just from fear. Confusion wormed its way into my thoughts. What did he mean by uncovering? Why was he so interested in me? "Why me?" I asked again, trying to sound more confident. "What do you need me for?" "Ah," he smiled, a grin that stretched too wide across his face. "You have something special about you, a connection to this place." He gestured around at the symbols, each etched deeply into the stone. Something about them felt familiar, though I couldn't place why. Then I noticed movement, shifting in the shadows behind him. Figures flickered in and out of existence, all watching me with hollow eyes. My breath quickened. How many were there? It felt like they were part of the very air around me, ready to pounce, ready to consume. The dark figure noticed my fear. "They are the lost," he said, his tone almost gentle. "The ones who sought the truth and were never seen again." I wanted to scream or run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. This place, it connected to something buried deep in my memory, a whisper of a dream or a nightmare. I remembered faces, familiar yet warped. Friends? Family? I couldn't tell. "Do you want to join them?" he asked, his voice low and coaxing. "Or do you want to learn what truly happened here?" His offer hung in the air, and for a moment I felt pulled in two different directions. Curiosity warred with fear. Part of me wanted to turn away, to run back into the darkness. But another part, a defiant spark, urged me to learn more. I took a step forward. "What do I need to do?" His eyes brightened. "Very good. Find the truth, and perhaps you'll find a way out." Suddenly, the symbols on the walls began to glow, lighting up the room in an eerie blue hue. I squinted against the brightness, and just like that, everything shifted. The shadows coalesced into figures that faced me, their cries rising again, a cacophony of despair. I stepped back, panic swelling. "No, wait!" But I was already losing my grip on reality again, as the darkness swirled around me, pulling me into another unknown. Somewhere in that chaos, I felt the sharp edge of fear and the bitter taste of determination. I was crossing a line, and I had no idea what I would find on the other side. When the world finally snapped back into focus, I was no longer in the dim chamber filled with shadows. Instead, I found myself standing in a vast, dilapidated warehouse, the kind with high ceilings and rusted beams. Dust motes floated in the thin shafts of light that broke through the boarded windows, casting eerie patterns on the cracked concrete floor. I blinked, my heart racing from the abrupt shift. The air was still thick, but now it smelled of old wood and something faintly metallic. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to escape whatever this place was. But I could still feel the urgency of the dark figure's promise echoing in my mind. Find the truth. A sense of isolation crept over me as I scanned my surroundings. Empty crates lay scattered, their contents long since removed. Something caught my eye among the debris. I moved closer, my curiosity outweighing my unease. There, partially hidden under a pile of rubble, was a notebook, its pages warped but still intact. I reached down, brushing off dust and grime. The faded ink danced across the pages, hasty notes scrawled in a manic hand. They talked about rituals, lost souls, and a great truth waiting to be discovered. The more I read, the more a chill settled deep in my bones. It felt almost like a warning, detailing how those who sought the truth often went missing. "Do not awaken the dark," one line read. "It is not what it seems." Fear bubbled up in my throat. What dark? Was it referring to the figure I had encountered? I closed the notebook, deciding it was better to step away from that unsettling history. But before I could move, I heard it, a distant scratching noise, like nails on metal. I froze, straining to listen. The sound grew louder, drawing nearer. My heart matched the rhythm of each scrape, quickening with my rising anxiety. Where was it coming from? Drawing shaky breath, I turned to my left, staring down the long, narrow corridor that spanned the length of the warehouse. With each breath, the scratching morphed into a series of whispered voices. I strained to catch the words, but they remained unintelligible, like echoes of nightmares I was not meant to remember. Then I saw it, a shadow creeping along the wall, elongating unnaturally. Panic surged, and I was about to run when a figure materialized at the far end of the corridor. It was another silhouette, darker than the shadows around it. My pulse raced wildly in my chest. "Who's there?" I shouted, hoping to conceal the tremor in my voice. The figure stopped for a brief moment, as if assessing me. I held my ground, though every fiber of my being urged me to flee. "Turn back." The voice was deep and reverberated in my bones. "This place is not for the living." Before I could process the warning, the shadows began to swirl again, merging into a mass that stretched and shifted. The warehouse felt alive, as if it were a hungry creature waiting for its next meal. Adrenaline coursed through me as I turned to run. "No! I need to find out the truth!" I yelled, desperation merging with fear. But that dark figure only watched, and with it came the sensation that whatever sought me had just begun. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of something on the floor, just behind where the shadow had been. It glittered like a shard of glass, but it felt unsettling, like it belonged in a past I had yet to uncover. I hesitated. Should I risk it, or was it another trap? Something told me it was key to the next step. As I knelt down, I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing closer, and I knew I needed to act fast. As I reached for the glimmering shard, my fingers brushed against its cool surface. An unsettling jolt shot through me, as if the thing were alive. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder. The dark figure stood still, but now it felt like the air thickened with anticipation, like a storm poised to unleash chaos. I took a breath and grabbed the shard, pulling it away from the debris. It was no ordinary piece of glass. It was etched with symbols I couldn't comprehend. The moment I held it, the whispers around me grew louder, swirling into a cacophony of fear and urgency. "Listen," they seemed to say. "This is your chance." My heart raced as I felt compelled to decipher the symbols. Could they guide me to the truth? But there was no time to ponder. The shadows writhed again, hungry to consume me. I had to move. I stood up, clutching the shard tightly. It pulsed faintly in my hand, sending vibrations that matched the frantic beating of my heart. The corridor stretched ahead, dark and foreboding, but I didn't have a choice. Sprinted down it, the whispers now growing frantic, as if warning me of an unseen danger. "Find the light," they urged, "before it's too late." I stumbled, nearly losing my footing as I turned a corner. The sound of scratching intensified behind me, and fear took hold. I glanced back, catching a fleeting glimpse of the dark figure, its grotesque form contorting with unnatural speed. Time felt elastic. I was running, but everything moved slower, as if the warehouse were reveling in my dread. I could feel my breath growing shallow. I needed a way out. The corridor curved again, and a dull glow appeared up ahead. I charged towards it, driven by a mix of adrenaline and hope. As I approached the light, I saw it was emanating from a small room. My instincts warred with each other. Was it safety or another trap? There wasn't time to waste. I bolted inside, slamming the door behind me. The room was cluttered with old machinery and forgotten tools, but more importantly, it was illuminated by a flickering overhead bulb. I looked around, my eyes landing on a workbench cluttered with strange metallic objects. One item stood out, an old lantern, rusted but intact. I snatched it up, figuring it might hold some power against the darkness chasing me. Just then, the door rattled violently. The darkness outside clawed at my sanctuary. The whispers now turned desperate. "Light! You must light it!" Without thinking twice, I fumbled through the supplies on the workbench for a lighter or fuel. I found a half-empty can of kerosene and hurriedly poured it into the lantern, praying it would work. The door shuddered again, and I lit the wick just in time. As the flame flickered to life, the shadows outside recoiled, caught off guard. A sense of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The glow revealed something even more unsettling. On the walls, the same symbols from the shard were scrawled in a frantic hand. Underneath, a date stood out, today's date. I took a step back, realizing the meaning of this revelation. I was not the first to come looking for answers. Then I heard a soft whisper laced with malevolence. "You've disturbed us, and now you must pay." I froze, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me.
The shadows outside were gathering strength. If I didn't act fast, I would be the next to vanish. The lantern flickered, and just as it threatened to die, I realized this truth would not come without sacrifice. I needed to find out what lay beyond the door, but I wasn't sure I was ready for the answers waiting for me. The lantern flickered ominously, and darkness encroached on the edges of my vision. It was time to face what I had awakened. I took a deep breath, feeling the air around me thicken as I tightened my grip on the lantern. The shadowy figure outside seemed to shimmer for a moment, as if weighing its...
The whispers behind the door grew more insistent, a chorus of voices urging me to act. With my heart pounding, I inched toward the door. Whatever waited for me outside was already furious, and I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I gathered my strength, ready to burst through. But just as I reached for the handle, a new noise pierced the darkness. A low, rumbling growl that sent chills down my spine. "What do you want?" I shouted at the door, my voice trembling. The only response was silence, thick and oppressive. Then the growl transformed into a pained wail, echoing through the corridor. I felt the vibrations resonate against my chest, and in that moment, fear slipped into desperation. I needed to know what was happening. Summoning all my courage, I twisted the door handle and flung the door open. The light from the lantern spilled into the corridor, revealing the figure further down, distorted and writhing in agony. The growls morphed into words, incomprehensible at first, but then crystallizing into a singular phrase: "Release us." Panic surged through me. Their eyes, two swirling voids of darkness, seemed to pull me closer. I stumbled back into the room, heart racing. The symbols on the walls suddenly came alive in my mind, and I recognized the urgency of their plea. They were not just warnings, they were a part of whatever was haunting this place. Then I noticed something flickering at the edge of my vision. I turned to see a second lantern on the workbench, its glass cracked and filled with an amber liquid that glowed softly. It pulsed like the shard in my hand. "Light it," the whispers commanded. "It will reveal the truth." Without hesitating, I grabbed the second lantern. But as I poured the liquid into it, dread settled in my stomach. What if this didn't work? What if I only drew more darkness to me? I lit the wick. The flame burst to life, brighter than the first lantern, bathing the room in amber light. The shadows outside shrank back further, but I could still hear their chatter, frantic and pleading. That's when the space between the lanterns flickered. I turned my head as the wall began to ripple like water. The symbols shifted and rearranged, forming a coherent phrase. "To know us is to free us." What did that mean? I felt the weight of what they were asking. Could it be that understanding was the key to their liberation? But at what cost? Then I saw movement behind the shimmering wall. Faces suddenly visible, twisted in agony. They were desperately reaching out, as if I could help them, but fear rooted me in place. I realized, with dawning horror, that this was not merely a rescue. It was a confrontation. My eyes darted back to the door. The darkness outside roared once more furious than before. Someone, or something, was coming for me. I couldn't hide any longer. I needed to confront whatever it was that plagued this place, and I could feel the lantern's light beginning to dim. With a surge of determination, I stepped forward, ready to face the unknown. I aimed the lanterns towards the doorway, heart racing as I prepared for what was to come. In that moment, the shadows coalesced, and I could feel the pull of their despair as I understood. Truth could be a path to salvation or destruction, and I was about to find out which one awaited me. I stepped into the corridor, my heart thundering in my chest, the flickering light from the lanterns casting long shadows along the walls. The oppressive air pressed against me, heavy with the whispers of those trapped in darkness. I clutched the lanterns, their warmth grounding me as I faced whatever lay ahead. As I moved further, the figures twisted in agony became clearer. I could almost hear their cries, pleading for release, echoing in my mind. My pulse quickened. I had to approach the source of that despair. Each step felt like it was drawing me deeper into the abyss. Then the shadows shifted. A shape broke free from the darkness, lunging towards me. I raised the lanterns instinctively, illuminating a face twisted in anguish. It wasn't just an apparition. It was a man, eyes pleading amidst the chaos. "Help me," he rasped, reaching out a hand. "You must find it." "What? Find what?" I shouted, fear and urgency colliding within me. The key to the truth." He was growing more frantic, as if time was slipping through his fingers. "You can't let them keep you." I felt a cold breeze sweep past, and the shadows distanced themselves from him, forming into a wall just beyond my reach. The growling returned, deepening as a new figure emerged from the darkness. This one was larger, more menacing, a presence that felt alive and hungry. "Do not listen to him," the new voice boomed. "He lies like the others." The man's expression twisted in fear, his hand wavering. "No, you have to believe me. You're the only one who can set us free." The words resonated in my mind, and I felt the pull towards the man despite the dark figure's warning. What truth was he talking about? Was there really a key? Questions swirled in my head as the shadows around me thickened, churning with sinister energy. Suddenly, the second lantern flickered violently, dimming with each ounce of fear that crept into my heart. I had to choose. "Find the key," the man's voice cut through the chaos, desperate and urgent. I nodded, even though my mind swam in doubt. But before I could ask what it looked like, the growling intensified, and the shadows lunged towards me. I ducked, trying to dodge the encroaching darkness. The lanterns bobbed in my hands, casting unsteady light as I stumbled back. Then I caught a glimpse of something gleaming on the ground. A small key, its surface glimmering in the flickering light. Instinct kicked in. I seized the key, and in that moment the shadows recoiled slightly, as if something about the key threatened them. It was a faint hope, but a hope nonetheless. The growl turned into a furious roar, and I could feel the ancient energy of the place swirling around me, urging me to make a choice. "Use it! Use the key!" the man cried, his voice rising above the cacophony of growls. I didn't know what would happen next, but I didn't want to wait for the darkness to consume me completely. I dashed toward the shimmering wall, aiming the lanterns at the surface. I could almost feel the pull of despair behind it, urging me to turn back. But I held the key tightly, ready to confront whatever truth lay beyond that veil. And as I approached, everything went still. I took a deep breath. I was about to find out what the key would unlock, and what darkness lay in wait beyond it. As my hand approached the shimmering wall, I felt a strange sensation ripple through the air around me. It was as if the darkness itself held its breath, waiting for my next move. My fingers brushed against the cold surface, just as a low rumble echoed through the corridor, shaking the ground beneath my feet. I pressed the key against the wall, heart racing. As soon as the cold metal connected, a bright light erupted from the key. I shielded my eyes, the light flooding the space and pushing back the shadows. I could hear the man's urgent voice, mingled with the distant growls of the dark figure. "Unlock it, now!" With barely a thought, I twisted the key. I heard a click, sharp and clear. The wall quivered and then split open, revealing a passageway beyond. A soft glow spilled from within, contrasting sharply against the darkness outside. I stepped forward, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation. As I crossed the threshold, the corridor behind me seemed to fade, replaced by an entirely new environment. I found myself in a dimly lit room, the air thick with a sweet, musty scent. Old furniture lay scattered around, covered in dust and cobwebs. What caught my attention was a large, ornate mirror hanging on the far wall, its surface cloudy and tarnished. I stepped closer, compelled to look. As I approached the mirror, I saw reflections of the tortured figures from the corridor, their faces distorted in silent screams. I stumbled back, heart racing again. "What is this place?" I murmured, fingers shaking. "You're in the Chamber of Truth," the man said from somewhere behind me. I turned, finding him emerging from the shadows. His face looked clearer now, illuminated by the glow from the mirror. This is where the key reveals the hidden lies that bind the souls here. I glanced at the mirror again, and confusion crept in. "What lies? What do you mean?" "The truth is twisted," he said, stepping closer. "The apparitions are souls trapped by the darkness. Their stories are intertwined, and the key won't just unlock a door, it will expose the truth, causing the light and shadows to clash." The growls from the corridor muffled behind me began to rise again, a warning tone echoing through the chamber. I felt a heaviness settle in my chest. "What happens if I see the truth?" I asked, anxiety prickling my skin. "You must be brave," he replied, his eyes intense. "You will witness their pasts, their regrets, their fears. But you must decide whether to free them or let the darkness consume them forever." Before I could respond, the mirror shimmered and gave way, and suddenly I was no longer in the room. Instead, I was plunged into a vivid scene from one of the figure's pasts. A factory floor, shadows of men working tirelessly, their faces marked by despair. "No," I gasped, realizing I was seeing the moment before their souls were claimed by darkness. Panic surged through me. I didn't know if I could handle this. Just as I considered retreating, the growling intensified, echoing through the chamber, vibrating deep within my bones. Something was coming. "Make your choice," the man shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. "You're running out of time." For a heartbeat, I stood frozen. Then I gripped the lantern tighter, teeth clenched. I had to act. But before I could gather my thoughts to decide, the darkness surged forward, threatening to swallow me whole. I was running out of time, and I had to confront this truth head on. The choice was mine, but the shadows were closing in. I was back in the dimly lit room again, but it felt different. The heavy air pressed down on me, thick with anticipation. I took a deep breath, reminding myself I wasn't in this alone. The man, the one who'd brought me here, watched closely. I could feel his tension, an electric charge between us as the growls crept closer. I needed to make a choice, but everything felt jumbled. I glanced at the mirror again, searching for clarity. It wasn't just fog that clouded the glass. It felt like hundreds of distorted histories swirling beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed, waiting for me to unlock their truth. "Focus on one," the man urged. "Pick a soul and let the story unfold. It might give you the strength to act." Nervously, I took a step toward the mirror, my heart racing. I needed to act, but I felt anchored by fear. "What if I can't handle it? What if it's too much?" My voice trembled. "Trust yourself. You can break the chain holding them here." I took a shaky breath and concentrated on one blurred reflection. A young woman with an expression of grief etched across her face. I felt a pull, a connection. Somehow I could sense that she was at the heart of everything. The mirror shimmered violently, and then, just like that, I was plunged into her world. I found myself in a small, cramped room. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, and the air was thick with the smell of old dust and something else. Was that despair? The woman sat on the edge of a bed, tears streaming down her face. In front of her was a wooden box, decorated with intricate carvings. "This is what tied her to the darkness," the man said softly by my side. I could feel his intensity even as I witnessed this sorrowful moment. She believed this box contained something precious, a secret to her worth, something that would save her. Save her from what? I asked, taking a cautious step closer to the scene. Her sobs filled the air, louder than the growls still echoing outside. I wanted to reach out to her, to tell her to let go of the box, but I wasn't sure how to intervene. Then the shadows seemed to twist around the edges of my vision, a warning of what was at stake. The room around me began to darken, the shadows stretching forward like hungry tendrils. I could almost feel them snaking around my legs, trying to pull me back. Fear gripped my chest. "I can't let this happen," I whispered, giving in to the panic rising within me. "Act quickly," the man urged. "Win her trust. Convince her to let go." "Let go," I echoed, stepping closer to the young woman. "You don't need this box. It's only causing you pain." Her eyes flicked to mine, and in that moment I could see flickers of hope intermingled with her sorrow. Then, with a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the floors, the shadows surged forward, and I knew I had to choose. Act now or be consumed by the darkness threatening both her and me. That's when I found something within myself, a spark of courage igniting my fear. I reached out toward her. "Trust me," I said, my voice firmer this time. "You can leave this behind." But before she could respond, darkness enveloped us, and then everything went dark. When the darkness receded, I found myself back in the dim room, and somehow it felt emptier than before. The whispers that had once thrummed in the air now faded to silence, replaced by my own ragged breathing. A trap door in the ceiling had swung open, revealing the stars, tiny lights twinkling against the vast expanse of night. The man stood beside me, his face a mask of tension and hope. "You did it," he said, relief flooding his voice. "But I fear it may not be enough." "What do you mean?" I asked, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. "What happened to her?" He gestured toward the mirror, now swirling with turbulent shadows. "She's free, but the darkness has not released its hold. It is changing shape, desperate to reclaim what was lost." My heart sank at the thought of that anguished woman, and the weight of her pain shifting onto something else. "Can we stop it?" "Perhaps, but it won't go quietly." He motioned toward the fading darkness. "You need to confront the heart of it. The truth that binds the souls here disturbs them the most." I nodded, heart pounding as I stepped closer to the mirror. Within its depths, I could see flickering images, the shadows morphing, becoming a swirling mass of anguish and rage. Unearthly growls reverberated out, shaking the very room around us. For a moment, I felt a wave of fear wash over me, nearly paralyzing. But I couldn't back down now. "Once you confront it, you must speak its name," he warned. "Only then will you have a chance to sever the connection it holds." "Speak its name?" I repeated, trepidation creep in. What if the name was also my own undoing, a sound that would corner me into despair? But there was no turning back. This was no longer just about saving the souls trapped in the darkness. It was about facing my own fears, the shadows of my past that had lingered in the peripheries of my reality. With a determined breath, I focused on the mirror. "I confront you," I shouted into the swirling mass. "Whatever darkness you are, I'm not afraid." A deep growl resonated, and the mirror rippled violently, the shadows coiling closer, the faces of lost souls flickering within them. "You cannot fight what you do not understand," a voice boomed. I could feel the oppressive weight of its presence pressing against me, threatening to consume. "I may not understand it all, but I refuse to be chained by fear anymore,"
I declared, standing firm. "You're a prisoner too, aren't you? A part of this place, demanding to hold others back to keep your grip on darkness." The growls surged, a chaos of anger erupting. "You dare speak of freedom? You are merely an echo lost in the shadows." "What are you afraid of?" I challenged, feeling the strength of my words. "The truth you hide is not worth your chaos. Let them go. Let yourself go." Suddenly, the mirror shimmered again, illuminating my surroundings. Images flickered wildly, stories of each soul intertwined, lost loves, buried regrets, and fractured dreams. It hit me like a tidal wave. They weren't just echoes, they were fragments of a shared existence, echoes of my own buried past. Their despair was resonating with my fears, feeding on my own darkness. The growl transformed into a low, mournful cry, reverberating through the room, shaking the mirrors. "You think you can release us? We are bound. We are the remnants, and you are but a fleeting flame." In that moment, I recognized the truth. The darkness was born from collective fear, the unacknowledged fears shared by all who had stepped foot in this warehouse. By illuminating the truth, I had given them a chance to speak their pain aloud, to be set free from the cycle of blame. But it required sacrifice, too.
"I am not afraid anymore," I yelled, finding my voice, steady as I spoke. "I break the hold of your pain." With each word, the shadows quivered, the forms within straining against their bonds. Behind me, I sensed the man watching silently, a flicker of hope igniting in his gaze. Suddenly, the shadows trembled so violently, it felt as though the entire warehouse was convulsing. The wrenching cries of tortured souls filled the air, reaching a crescendo. A burst of blinding light exploded out from the mirror, engulfing me in warmth, pulling me toward it as if I were a vessel filled to the brim with light. And then, just like that, I was standing back outside the warehouse, gazing at the stars shimmering so brightly across the night sky. My heart raced, but the heaviness that once hung over me was gone. I blinked, astonished that the shadows no longer loomed over me. The man had disappeared, leaving only the echoes of his urging words behind. But I could still hear them in the distance, the faint whispers of the souls finally released. Relief washed over me, though something lingered in the air, unanswered questions stirring in my mind. I turned back to the warehouse, seeing only an abandoned structure, shadows looming harmlessly along the edges of its walls. I still felt the remnants of fear within, an unsettling familiarity creeping back, yet my heart whispered differently. In that moment, I realized that I had escaped, woven into the fabric of my own story, yet I was not free from understanding. As I walked away, my thoughts drafted around what had truly transpired. Had it been a nightmare, or had I really confronted something sinister? I still think about the man, the souls, and whether their truths were now free or merely waiting for the next seeker to unlock their secrets again. Maybe some darkness will always linger, waiting for another wandering soul who dares to enter. But now I walk with light, knowing the choice remains mine, whether to confront my own shadows or leave them behind, unanswered for another day.